Alright, so this is just simply using a plane. So I'm on the Create tab here, Geometry, Standard Primitives, click on Plane, and then just drag it out. And by default, you'll notice here as I'm creating it, it's got the parameters active, and it displays 4 length segments and 4 width segments. So this just gives me some detail to work with. That's not nearly enough for what I'm about to do, so the first thing I want to do here is increase the segments. I would go at least to 64 by 64, but even more than that will give you better results. So I'll go 128 by 128. And remember, if you hit F4, you'll see a representation where all those edges are. So you can see it's a much more densely populated plane now. I'm also going to hit the G just to turn the grid off, so I reduce some of the confusion on screen there. And then once that's done, I'm just going to right-click with the plane selected, and I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. And now, having done that, I've got access to what they call the graphite modeling tools, just kind of below the ribbon here. Initially, I won't see the options here at all, but there's a tiny little drop-down button here. If I click that, it'll give me a better view of these freeform and graphite modeling tools. And then, if I click on the freeform tab over here on the right, I've got a tool here just called Paint. And I can go with a few different options here, but to start off with, I'll just click on Push-Pull. And you can see the cursor there as it moves around the plane, just barely. But that circle indicates sort of the paintbrush influence area. I'm going to hit F4 so now I can turn off all those little squares and just see the polygon, and now this will give me a good impression as to what it's doing. And as I drag around, it'll just create that roughness here. So good for water, whatever. And notice that it's actually pulling that plane up at the edges as well. So it's not just going to limit it to sort of the interior areas. Once I've done some initial disturbance, if I decide I've gone too much, I've got all kinds of options here. I can flatten it out, kind of make it a little bit more subtle. I can add some noise, so if I don't want those really smooth bumps, I can make them a little bit more articulated here. And just play around with some of the different options here. I can kind of drag. This is kind of where that analogy of digital clay comes in. I can manipulate those surfaces a little bit more freely. And anyway, a few other options here, a few things that I can do to manipulate that, but it's fairly intuitive at that point. Just kind of get the desired result. Okay, but noise, rather than having like a smooth sort of rise, like I did with that press or that push-pull tool, it just kind of gives you a little bit of static. So you can go a little too far with this, obviously. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of looks like that.
That's crazy.
All right, so now you can start to get some errors in there where geometry is kind of like folding over geometry and you've got intersecting planes and that sort of thing. So that can start to cause some problems with rendering, but just have some fun with it. If you want to reduce the effect, just click on Flatten or Relax, Soften. You can see that kind of erases things a little bit. So just one of those kind of intuitive things that you can kind of go back and forth on to get different results. But good for organic effects, where you've got maybe water striking a surface or maybe a little bit of erosion, in the landscaping or something like that.